Good day to everybody. Alright, so I want to do something a bit new. We'll do a book review once a month. So if you do enjoy this, just let me know. And if you like the format, also let me know about that. And we'll do this probably at the end of each month. What I want to do is show you a paperback book. As I said, once a month. Just something I've read that month or something that I can pick off my bookshelf. Alright, so this is the first one we're going to do. A Broom at Midnight, 13 Gates of Witchcraft by Spirit Flight by Roger J. Horne. I love this book, absolutely brilliant. It's amazing. And I'll show you why just now. So this was, just find out who the publisher was, let me just check. I think this may have been, Moon Over the Mountain Press. Don't think I've heard of them before. I do want to get hold of Roger J. Horne's other books. But he's a great author. He gets straight to the point, basically, and he does discuss law, old traditional witchcraft law. This is specifically folk magic and traditional witchcraft. But what it does, let's just go to the index. Alright, so what we start off with is some basic discussion about witch law, and going back to the old witch trial records and referring back to that and bringing that into very much a modern context. And it discusses the devil, riding the devil in chapter 2 there, and it goes a lot into, well, it obviously it does discuss spirit flight, but in the context of the witch's sabbat, and actually riding to the witch's sabbat. That's its main focus. The methods in here can obviously be used for a lot of other things besides just access to the witch's sabbat. Basically they open gateways or doorways into the other world. So you can use it for spirit flight regardless of where your aim actually is. So the first few chapters, they discuss how to actually get there, what you actually do, the principles behind it and the law behind it. And they go into it goes into things like the fetch and familiar, and the hag body or the second body, and actually how that affects the whole process of the spirit flight. It does also, which is a very interesting part, just want to get there, is it discusses opening the crossroads. Let me just get there quick. It's the preparation. So in preparations, speaking with the moon, so it's kind of, crossing that barrier that we face with trying to communicate with things which are not human. So there's a whole practice of speaking with the moon, awakening the witch sight, which is obviously very important in this process. Empowering the fetch or hag body. That's you could supposedly, or I suppose you could call it the shadow. The fetch body or the hag body is the shadow, is the second body that we have, which then takes flight into the other world. Let's just see. Calling the familiar spirit aids you in your flight. Opening the crossroads. It's a very interesting method where there's a little diagram over here. So you kind of hold your hands in a position like that, and then you separate them, which then separates the lines of the crossroads and opens up a gateway or a doorway. So some very interesting methods in here. Now what I really like about this book, he goes through each of the 13 methods to actually get into or accomplish the spirit flight and move into the other worlds, ride to the witch's sabbat, etc. But what he does with each chapter, he opens it with a narrative, which is a story of how a witch would actually use this method in practical, real life. And all of these little conjurations and charms, they are absolutely amazing. He does put footnotes, for instance, Eo Regina Pygmiorum. He then refers to where it came from. This appellation of Our Lady is attested in the works of William Lilly in the mid-1600s, loosely rendered as Dark Queen. There's horse and haddock, horse and go, horse and pilatus, ho ho, a verbal charm described by Scottish witch Isabel Gowdy in 1662. Horse and haddock was considered in the folklore of the time to be what fairies cried out before going invisible and disappearing into the other world as the presence of a mortal. A hattock is thought to mean a small hat. So this is an old charm that was used in traditional witchcraft and folk magic. Then what he does, he discusses the lore behind this method itself. So he goes through all of the lore, and then it goes on to the next method or chapter. And again, there's a narrative of how this can be practically used in witchcraft, with new charms, different charms, and each chapter has different charms which are just absolutely amazing. A lot of them come from Comuna Gadelica, and there's some actually that are taken from and adapted. Well, they are adapted a lot actually, but they're taken from the Greek magical papyri, which is also quite an interesting source. So anyway, he goes through all of the 13 chapters. So it's a narrative and then discussion of the actual lore from the records, the witch trial records. And then what you find is, after you've finished all of that, because you kind of like, you read the narrative and it gives you an idea of how to use it, and then you read the lore and it gives you all the background. But what would really be nice is a practical exercise that you can actually do to incorporate these different methods. So after you've finished all 13 methods and all 13 chapters, what we get to is the ritual appendix. And with each one, it goes through them again, and where he's said via aquarum, then he labels it a stang or besom rite. So this is the right way you actually ride the stang or the besom to the other world, and it's a point by point breakdown of how you actually do this, with any charms that may be useful in that process. And he refers to, for instance, begin by breathing deeply and relaxing your body, quiet your bodily senses, and awaken your witch sight. Consult pages 53 to 55 for instructions on this step if needed. And then does the same when you are doing the crossroads charm, the ring of art charm, refers you back to the pages where that is actually explained and described. So this is a practical, extremely practical book of how to actually attain all of these methods. So each one, and then it goes into the tree rite, and then into a hold stone rite. Hold stone rite would be your hagstone. The rite of the grave, so this is using graveyard work. You can take some graveyard dirt and use it with this method. An anointing rite, so this is using the balm or the flying ointment. And then we go into a dream rite, so using dream time, dreaming to get into the other world. A water and cauldron rite, this is very much a gazing at the water, very similar to scrying, except you're not using it to get visions, you are using it as a doorway into the other world. Shape-shifting rite, shape-shifting into a particular animal, which is usually associated with your familiar. Cartomantic Rite. This specific one uses the deck, I've forgotten the name now. I'll have a look in a second. I'll just go back there. Oh, the Marseille tarot cards, purely just because of the imagery that's on them. But it uses 4 specific cards: the Devil, the Moon, the Fool, and the World, and you lay them out in such a way that it creates a sort of like a diamond pattern in the center, and then you use that as a doorway, as a gateway. A Wind Rite, which is very interesting. This is you've probably heard of the witches who would tie up the storm in knotwork and then sell it to the sailors, so that when the sailors are out, they release one of the knots, and it causes the wind to come along and push them forward in their boats. This is very similar, except that, you know, it's a similar process where you would stand in the middle of a storm and gather all that energy into yourself and then put it into actual knotwork. And then when you need to use it, you untie the knots in order to blow you into the other world. A Rhythmic Rite, so this would be very much your chanting, your repetition of a chant in order to put you into a trance and then take you in. And the chant is: I rode a grey horse, it is called a grey mare, grey mane, grey tail, grey stripe down its back, and not a hair on it that was not coal black. And you repeat that over and over again. It puts you into a trance, which then takes you through that trance state into the other world. A Fire Rite is where you can use a fire or a candle flame and you gaze into the hottest part of it. This one is, the chant in this is actually an adaptation from the Greek magical papyri. The original that I could, closest I could find, is very, very different. It's actually so different. I would say this is more original than anything else. But you gaze into the hottest part of the flame, and that opens up as a doorway. And then a Rite of the Shadow. This one is actually similar if you have ever read about initiatory processes in folk magic, where the devil will put one hand on your foot and one hand on your head, and everything between belongs to the devil. This is actually that particular initiatory rite which is used in here in order to gain, or you use the witch sight to gain sight of the dark figure, the devil, and then it opens the hidden doorways. So, excellent book. I loved it to bits. And the bibliography in the back is extensive. There's a lot of stuff you can actually then go and read, which relates to everything within this. So, brilliant book, definitely recommend. I think everybody should read this. It doesn't actually matter if you're practicing traditional witchcraft, folk magic, or whether your aim is demonology, which a lot of the stuff on this channel is focused on. This in itself is useful for everybody. Everybody who wants to actually venture into the other world, who wants to experience the witch's sabbat and such things. This is a brilliant practical guide to how to get there and what to do. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this first book review in this format, and just let me know what you think of it. And I'll see you next time. Cheers for now. Bye bye.